Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our regular scheduled Sueur City Council meeting dated September 11, 2023. At this time, we will begin with the call to order and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council members, you were all given your packet over the weekend. You also received your packet electronically. You've had a chance to look things over. At this time, I will approve or I will accept any motions to accept tonight's agenda. So moved. Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Tui, thank you, seconding. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the City Council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. At this time, I will ask our city administrator to review the consent agenda with us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight's consent agenda, the first item is the approval of city council minutes from the last meeting, August 28th, 2023. Second, approval of disbursements through today. Included in those disbursements are 5 items over $25,000 or $25,000 and over. Excuse me. The first MMPA for August 2023 purchase power, $864,307.67. Second, the Minnesota Department of Revenue for August 2023 city sales tax in the amount of $59,492. Third, to NEO water treatment for the FX300 wastewater treatment facility material, $41,189.20. Fourth, to GEA Westphalia for centrifuge equipment and maintenance of the wastewater treatment facility, $32,093.31. And fifth, to So Many Properties for Small Cities Development Program allocation for $25,000. Item C, approved liquor license, consumption and display license for Luke's. Item D, approved parade permit. LSH is bringing back the homecoming parade after a long absence. Item E, approved payment application number 19 for the Well 8 and Well House project. Item F, G, and H are all separate Main Street closure applications. The bar and grill is the primary applicant, and they have 3 separate events coming up in September, October, and November.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions for our city administrator regarding the consent agenda? If not, I will accept any motions to accept tonight's consent agenda. So moved. Thank you, Councilmember Huntington. Second. Councilmember Williams, thank you. Seconded. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to any public comment. Nobody on there. Nobody there. Mr. Chewy, thank you. Appreciate it. Moving on to the city administrator's update. Mr. Roby, what do you have to share with us tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I've got a few items here. I'm going to give a couple of committee updates, very brief, and I apologize to council members who might choose to provide updates for those meetings, but I'm just going to go ahead and say my piece. We had an RPAC meeting. We introduced Joel Schmidt, a new public works manager, to the RPAC group and discussed camping and campsites at River Park. The public services director position, applications for that closed. And we will be having interviews for that position at the end of this week. The last couple of weeks have been primarily lots of budget work at staff level and also conducting police chief interviews. And of course, the outcome of the police chief interviews and that hiring process will be on the regular agenda later tonight. For that, I would like to thank Police Chief Tim Applin from the City of New Prague and Police Chief Matt Groko from the City of St. Peter. Both of them sat on our interview panel. They provided a lot of great feedback and insight, and they were a real pleasure to work with. They had everybody at City Hall charmed by the time they left. Wonderful guys. Just a reminder to City Council members, October 14th, it's a Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon at the middle school, high school. In the auditorium and in the media center, the Planning Commission will be conducting the Future of the City Forum. The planning for that is underway, and we're going to have some representatives from the school district in attendance, Superintendent Wagner, and I'm recruiting a board member to sit at the table to share some updates on the school construction project and their test scores. The city has a wellness committee, and the wellness committee puts out events for staff throughout the year. They had an annual picnic Thursday, August 31st. It was a great time. The weather was perfect, and we gave away some prizes. And played a lot of games, played some mean pickleball and bags, and a lot of staff went over and had a driving contest and some other things at the golf simulator. So it was a lot of fun. So I want to extend my appreciation to the Wellness Committee for encouraging active recreation and wellness among all city staff. Personnel and Budget Committee met last week, September 6th. To discuss principally the preliminary budget and levy, which will be on the regular agenda later tonight. Planning Commission will meet this Thursday. A couple items on the agenda. The most significant of which is consideration of the Tiller Place, which is a proposed apartment complex located at the corner of South Second and Ferry Street. In the southeast corner of the mall parking lot. So Planning Commission will be reviewing their application, and there'll be a public hearing. So I expect some folks from the community will come out to that, which is great. It's a great opportunity for the public to learn more about the project as the Planning Commission considers the application. We had an Airport Commission meeting last week. Airport Commission discussed a few different things, primarily their long-term capital plan. There was the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed, provided a lot of additional funding through the FAA for capital projects at airports, and so the Airport Commission is working on the best ways to spend those capital dollars. We'll be having a special meeting sometime in early October of the Airport Commission to consider the use of those dollars. And just a quick side note on that. So the airport, with the FAA dollars, the FAA provides a lot of the funding for capital projects out of the airport. In general, any large capital projects that meet the FAA's guidelines for specific use of specific programs, such as expansion of taxiways, runway improvements, construction of new hangars, things like that. The FAA, if the projects are approved, will provide up to 90% of the funding for those projects. The thing that the Airport Commission is working through right now is that anytime you deal with a government contract with the FAA, there are a whole lot of strings attached, and so projects get a whole lot more expensive. So the local match for a lot of these projects is between 5 and 10%, which is a benefit to the community because our investment is relatively small, but the overall cost of some of these projects is pretty hefty. Tomorrow I'm meeting with a group, including members of the Rotary and the Lions Club for the downtown walking tour. Some of you are familiar with this. There's a group that's been kind of organically designing a historical walking tour throughout downtown. The city's had a few different meetings over the last year and a half with this group, and they're at the process now where they're kind of sorting through the big green book, the Town on a River, is that it? The big green book that's at the library, that's published in the 70s, to kind of break up the history of the area into segments and then make each stop on a walking tour kind of a summary of the area's history. I have a meeting this week with the organizers of Christmas in the Valley, which will be here before we know it, December 1st. It's the first Friday in December. Christmas in the Valley will be held downtown. So Mr. Edberg and I will be meeting this week to discuss his preliminary plans for the event. Two last things. One is Highway 93 right-of-way acquisition. So this is our friends with the Henderson Independent will be very familiar with this. But the city owns some property along Highway 93. It's the old lagoons, wastewater lagoons on the north side of town, the north side of 169. Those abut Highway 93 in the current right-of-way for Minnesota 93. As part of the 93 project, which has been approved by MnDOT, and they're engineering it and then doing some more engineering on it, they need to extend their right-of-way. To do so, they need to acquire some of the city's property and some property from a number of property owners along 93 between Sueur and Henderson. And so we're working through the process right now with them on the acquisition of that right-of-way. So I expect to have more updates to City Council now, but what they're looking at is approximately 6.9 acres of city property, which a lot of it is where the Swans live and kind of between the old Coach Light and Bucks Lake, just an extensive city property along there. And lastly, two more things, I apologize. I'll get to the library in a second here. I heard today from Senator Klobuchar's office. Senator Klobuchar will be visiting the city of Sueur this Friday to discuss public safety at a private meeting. The mayor and I spoke earlier today, and I just spoke with them about an hour ago, and they would like 2 to 3 other council members who would be available to join the meeting as well. So if there's anyone available, it's Friday morning, 9 o'clock. It'll be here in council chambers. It will not generally be open to the public, but we're going to have some representatives from public safety and some members of Senator Klobuchar's team. So she was hoping to come last March, but then there was a snowstorm and she couldn't make it. So we made the schedule. So if you are interested and available, please see me after the meeting. And finally, I was visiting with Jesse Zimmerman, our friendly neighborhood librarian. And Jesse wanted me to provide City Council with an update. This was in the packet. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to review it. We did a recap similar to this one after the 2022 summer reading program, which is really the, kind of like the get out the vote campaign for the library here, involving lots and lots of local kids, teens and adults. You can see some of the registration numbers here, but it involves hundreds of community members. They had over 400 people at the kickoff party. They had events throughout the summer, and 35 different events. Gave out over 500 books, collected food for the food shelf. It's a huge effort and a really cool thing, I think, in the community. I mean, I, for one, not saying any of you do, but I, for one, take for granted the fact that we have a program like this at our public library in town. There are a lot of communities who wish they could have a program like this. And the city's involved to the extent that the city owns the building. But I do appreciate the efforts of all the library staff and the friends of the library who put on all of these events. So very cool things. And I suspect Jesse will be sending out the summer 2024 summer reading program materials sometime early next spring. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Pretty extensive report. We appreciate it. Any questions for Mr. Roby at all? No. We will then take ourselves into the regular agenda, which the first thing on there is item 7A, personnel action. We're going to visit about our new police chief candidate and vote on that. So, Mr. Roby, you want to review that with us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As I alluded to earlier, we had an extensive process fill the vacancy left when Chief Aaron Tiki resigned in August. We posted the position, had 17 applicants, a number of very qualified and highly recommended applicants. The interview panel, as I mentioned, included 2 chiefs from local jurisdictions, which was a huge benefit to us. And we conducted 7 interviews over 2 days, got to know the candidates very well through the course of those interviews. And the recommendation in front of council tonight is to approve the hiring of Pilar Sueur. Pilar has over 20 years with the Minnesota State Patrol. She's served in several leadership capacities there. She has extensive experience in training, legal, regulatory, very passionate about community policing, engaging different groups throughout the community to try to create a better, safer community. And I would say very much sees the police department in a community as not only a punitive force, but as a critical part of the social contract. And we have a community that's very, very supportive of our local police department. And we're very confident in the skills and experience that she would bring to that position and carrying that vision forward. So the recommendation tonight, we did extend an offer to Pilar, and as with all police department employees, those offers are contingent upon an extensive background process, which has begun already. And tonight we are, normally a personnel action like this would be on the consent agenda, but given the level of the position, it's on tonight's regular agenda.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Roby?
Joe, I do. When you talk about that background check, I know internally, when it's an officer position, we have internal people that do that. Who does it in the role of a chief capacity?
Good question. In the case of a chief, it's typical for a municipality or jurisdiction to contract that out to create as much objectivity as we can. So I took recommendations from a couple of different chiefs in the area who have gone through, who have utilized different services in the past, and we're using Crescent Investigative Services out of Rochester for the background.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just a quick one.
Sure.
If accepted tonight, when would she be able to begin?
Thank you for asking that. I meant to put it up on here. So she has commitments with the State Patrol that will, I want her to start tomorrow. The background check will take a while. They normally take a while with any officer. With the chief, the process can take a little bit longer, and I anticipate her starting in December. So I'll be having conversations with the city of Belle Plaine. We currently have a contract with Belle Plaine Chief Terry Sueur to serve as interim through November 19th. And I'll be having a conversation with the city of Belle Plaine should council approve this action tonight, about extending that a couple of weeks.
Thank you. I know you interviewed a very competitive field of officers for this position, and this year rose to the top. So at this time, I will entertain any motions to approve the hiring of Pilar Sueur as City Sueur Police Chief contingent upon successful background process.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Williams, thank you, seconded. Any discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. I'm in conversations with Ms. Sueur. Both she and I are interested in beginning the transition process as soon as we can. And so I expect that she and I will have conversations throughout the next few months. And as part of that, if there's an opportunity for her to come forward to meet city council, I'd like to invite her to do so.
Please do. Moving on to agenda item 7B, accepting work South Main Street reconnection project. That's R 2023-029. Mr. Beanbank, I'll let you introduce him, please, Mr. Roby.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. First of all, my apologies, Mr. Beanfang, the clicker is broken, so if you could just give me a high sign and I'll advance the slides. Corey's here tonight to speak on the next two agenda items, 7B and 7C, which is acceptance of first the South Main Street Reconnection Project and second the Facade 22 or Trunk Highway 112 Chargeback Project. Without much further ado, I'll hand it off to Mr. Beanfang, but both of these projects have reached the point where we're comfortable asking City Council for acceptance of the work. Punch list items have been completed. It's been a long time coming, and I think for some of the community, they assume these projects are already closed out and done, but this is a regular process of these types of projects, and I'll let Corey speak to that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roby. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Yeah, a couple of items of celebration that I would speak to. There's a lot of process that goes once construction is complete, the punch list specifically, and ensuring that the standards and construction has met that standard and ultimately are operable and maintainable. And so a lot of behind the scenes, even after roads are open and utilities are being used. And so the first project up, as Mr. Roby alluded to, is the South Main Street Reconnection Project. And the goal of tonight will be to accept work and then ultimately approve final payment, being that the contract with the contractor was through the city of Sueur. This was a local project. So just a little background, the project was identified in planning on a comprehensive and downtown master plan. It's a kind of a critical project as we will recall the reconnection there, South Main Street. Started design in 2020, construction in 21. So it's a pretty tight timeline as far as, initial project development really stemmed by the mall redevelopment project. Those are kind of, paired as far as the timeline goes. We reached substantial construction last August, so roadway open for the most part, everything perceived to be completed at that point in time. And then we did with this contract, as with most contracts to incorporate, substantial plantings, there's a 1-year plant establishment period. So we walked that here this summer in June, assessed any of the dead plants. There were several and replaced those. And then now feel we are at a point now where those plants are replaced, being maintained with the irrigation system, and feel comfortable that we're at the point of expiration then of that plant establishment. If you don't mind, Joe. So project summary, just a couple of highlights here. The construction cost did come under bid. At the time of award, we did negotiate some cost savings opportunities, and so those are able to live through and materialize all the way through the final as-built project. Final paperwork's been received, so there's some records and documentation that's necessary to substantiate and ultimately allow for the city to approve that work. That's been received. And then following this acceptance, then there's a 2-year warranty. So we'll be monitoring and ensuring that things are meeting the standard. Workmanship, material failures, those are the things that we're going to be mindful of. Use of the corridor, regular wear and tear, unfortunately, don't fall in that warranty period. So certainly something we'll continue to track here throughout the next 2 years. So then ultimately, the action requested tonight is council's consideration to adopt. We have been accepting these projects via resolution. It's not a requirement, but I think it's a nice way to kind of memorialize this moment and put on record the date of it, and ultimately have this transparency in the process. So tonight, it's the 029 resolution to accept work for South Main Street reconnection project, and then within that resolution then is the allow us then for city to make that final payment. And I believe it's like 40,000, something like that. Ultimately, it's really the release of the last bit of retainage that we've held to ensure we get the paperwork in and get to a point where we can accept. So be happy to entertain any questions at all that we might have on South Main Street, but that's the action before you tonight.
Anybody?
I have one, Mayor. Corey, when does the warranty period begin?
So warranty begins, it varies based on the contract. In this contract, with specifics, it's the date of final acceptance. So that warranty period will be effective essentially tonight.
And it covers everything?
It covers the full project, project area. And the challenge with the warranty, I shouldn't say the challenge, but just the mindfulness of warranty within the contract language is very specific to workmanship, material issues or failures. So, it's essentially acknowledging poor workmanship, which we've tried to be very thorough in identifying through the punch list and before we get to an acceptance period, just because it is warranty claims are a little bit more challenging because it's being used and winters, and so you want to be really mindful of the condition you accept it in, but it would be substantial things that would be maybe unexpected that you would ultimately hope to see in those first 2 years if they were going to show themselves. So that would be those would be the things we would be looking and mindful of.
Very good. Anybody else? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept resolution R 2023-029, accepting work South Main Street reconstruction project.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg. Seconded by Councilmember Schleter. Any questions, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 7C, R 2023-03, accepting work for CASA 22 improvement project. Mr. Beanfang.
Appreciate it, Mr. Mayor and Council. So the second project we have before you tonight, a little bit more substantial, a little bit longer duration and project process, but it's the CASA 22, the 112 turnback project. Just thought it was kind of interesting to capture the timeline here. So this turnback was really first identified in a transportation plan for the county, in 2007. Had some conditions in there, but that was when it was first kind of, written that there might be an opportunity, or MnDOT was interested in turning back this corridor. It kind of became more substantial and acknowledged in 2017. So a couple of years of planning, working through that agreement from the state to the county, and then allowing us to get into final design in 2019. That's when we would have started our 429 process and being able to special assess right-of-way acquisition would have been taking place then. More than a dozen meetings between city and county staff, some staff transitions amongst that timeline. We had 6 open houses, so it felt like we did good due diligence and transparency of that project process throughout that final design and then into and through construction. Started construction in 2020 that we all can recall. 2 years of pretty intense construction, summer of 21, summer of 20, summer 20, summer 21. And then we were substantially complete last summer, and then just working through punch list and final acceptance. A project of this size, it just took a little bit of time to get that to a point of final acceptance. So if you don't mind, Joel. So project summary, I just went back. I thought it was just, obviously a pretty historic property for a project for the city of Sueur. So we reconstructed, pure reconstruction, over 2 miles of roadway, a little over half mile of rural, so no curb and gutter. That would be the southern limit, the Elmwood portion. 1.5 miles of pure urban reconstruction, so everything on North Elmwood, Ferry, Bridge Street, Forest Street. Rehabilitated over 1.5 miles, so Ferry, Commerce Street, so that was where, we didn't do a full reconstruction, not a full utility recon, but definitely, rehabilitated the full road surface. We rebuilt over 2 miles of trail with this project. Most of it obviously along Elmwood, a new corridor, but then expanded the Ferry sidewalk to be a trail. Safety improvements, the flasher on Ferry, dynamic speed signs, street lighting, extended that all the way down Elmwood. That wasn't existing before. The center left turn lane on Elmwood was a brand new road configuration. So pretty substantial project, and I think we're appreciating here every day, but we're at this point now where we can consider it done. So this as well has a 2-year warranty period that will start at the time of final acceptance. This project just is a pinch more unique than the South Main Street in the sense that the contract isn't officially through the city. So tonight is an action for the city to accept the project. This is also proposed to be a resolution, but then it'll go to the county board for their acceptance, and then that's when the final payment then will be authorized. So we are kind of a silent partner, so to speak, in the contracting situation here on this project. So we're accepting tonight. I think, again, just to memorialize that the construction is complete, certainly that as a city, we're satisfied with it. Puts an end to, the assessment process. And so just a bit of a caveat in that we had no control with the contract specifically. So if you don't mind, Joe. So then the language of this resolution is just specific to the acceptance. So action before council tonight is to consider the acceptance via resolution 030, accepting the work for the CSAT 22 Trunk Highway 112 Turnback Improvement Project. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments that may be related to this one.
Anybody with any questions? Got Mr. Sullivan?
Corey, I have gotten a lot of complaints about the landscaping along this project. Have we done any resolution with that?
Yeah, I was prepared and anticipating potentially that question. So we've had a lot of discussion at staff level. This project's challenging and unfortunately didn't, provide the results that were certainly anticipated. And to some extent, some of the same conditions we're working through on our current construction projects. But I think the admittance is we've gone back, we've done some validation in the topsoil depths and the quality of topsoil is installed. This project was sodded for those that maybe didn't recall, and the urban residential area I would acknowledge was all sod, which we had some projects prior to that where we were trying to seed and we actually eluded and upgraded to sod on this corridor with hopefulness to provide the best product as far as restoration goes. The reality is I think Mother Nature didn't participate as much as we wish she would have in keeping that sod alive. We had gone back, we did some slit seeding. We tried to, kind of, I guess, recover the restoration, but, I'm acknowledging it certainly in some areas, it's a standard that I think we wish was improved for sure. I think as I shared with Mr. Roby, I think the discussion would be is if, we as a city, I guess I'll caveat first. My first statement is I believe it's outside the contract. I believe the contractor's obligated what the contract required. There's structure in there as far as how long the contractor's supposed to maintain the sod. That was satisfied. We tried to go back and redo the seeding. We tried to at a city and county level, try to get that established. So I'm acknowledging I think some weather challenges. I think at this point in time, the turf is the responsibility of private property. That's certainly where we've landed, I think, at a city staff level. If there is, discussion and a willingness to reevaluate further at the city level, it would be outside this contract. That's how I've shared with Mr. Roby and the county is, I think, understand that as well. So I think ultimately the contractor's relieved of it. I think they've done their contract requirement. But if there is a desire to I guess change the current condition, certainly got some thoughts on that. But I think it'd be something separate from this project contract. I hope that answers your question. So
It does.
I think there can be further discussion, further consideration, but I think that's where we would have to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, good question, very good question. Anybody else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept resolution R 2023-030, accepting work for the CSAT 22 112 Turnback Improvement Project.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington.
Second.
Councilmember Swanberg, thank you. Seconding, any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Bianfang. Thank you. Very good report. We're very delighted with Main Street and CSAT 22.
I appreciate it very much.
Moving on to item 7D, the 2023-031 adoption of the 2024 preliminary levy, the general fund budget. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Finance Director Graff is here tonight. He'll run the show for the most part here. I will just give a little kickoff here. So this is tonight, we're at the point of the process where we are every early September. So the city council is required by September 30th of every year to submit a preliminary general fund budget and levy to Sueur County. Sueur County takes that, they aggregate it with the school districts, with the townships, with the county preliminary tax levy, with watershed districts, the whole kit and caboodle, and put it into what most property owners receive generally in November-ish timeframe, which is their preliminary 2024 property tax statement. between between September 30th and December 31st, cities can make revisions to that general fund budget and general fund levy. They just cannot revise it upward. You can keep it consistent with what's approved in September, or they can decrease it, but they cannot increase it. City Council had a work session last Monday, which I appreciate the opportunity to speak with City Council about it. I think that worked really well for City Council to have an open conversation around the general fund budget and preliminary levy last week. As I mentioned in my update, staff and personnel budget committee have spent a good amount of time in the last week, even up to just a couple hours ago when Brian and I were discussing the capital budget, making some revisions to the budget levy that was presented and discussed at the work session last week. And you'll see a reflection of the changes that have been made in the last week in Mr. Graff's presentation. Again, Ryan, I'm sorry, my clicker's not working, so I'll just advance the slides if you just wave to me.
Sure. All right. Thanks, Administrator Roby, Mayor Kirby, members of council. Just quickly, Joe, kind of covered the process, but our preliminary levy, we must submit it to the county auditor no later than September 30th. We have had numerous meetings with personnel and budget, including the city council workshop. And the items that are presented tonight are recommended by the personnel and budget committee for approval. And then we will have final levy adoption and public hearing at the December 11th meeting here later this year. In summary, the 2024 preliminary levy is a little bit over 3.7 million. That is just under $200,000 increase from the 2023 citywide levy, which is about a 5.68% increase. There is an increase in the capital levy to offset prior year decrease and allow for 2024 capital projects. There is an increase in the debt service levy based on existing bonds and payment schedules, as well as assuming a new equipment certificate for a plow truck that is not needed. The EDA levy is decreased just based on our current view of revenue and expenses. And the tax capacity is projected to increase by about 6.6%. I had to look at that a little bit today. It is much more evenly spread as it pertains to like residential and commercial. So it's not the wide gap that we have seen in the past, but it's all line items are relatively close. On to the next slide, please. Okay, what is changing? A big change here this year in revenue is an LGA increase of approximately $165,000 that was approved in the legislation. That typically has been $10,000, $20,000 of an increase year over year. We wouldn't expect this magnitude of an increase going forward, but the 165 will stay. And I would assume we'd be back to $10,000 to $20,000 increases in the future. We've got increases in utilities and product and insurance expenses, assuming about a 10% increase in those. We are seeing some increases in training, fuel, engineering fees, and IT expenses as well. Sorry, I kind of skipped out of some of the revenue. I'll go back to revenue. My apologies. Community center, our memberships are continuing to increase, so we are seeing some help there. It's offset a bit by our building permit revenue, which is down. We just don't currently have a lot of buildable lots that is driving permit revenue down. And then our Johnson Controls payments that we had been receiving stopped in 2022, so that's going down as well. Back to the expense, the second bullet there, increase in training, fuel, engineering fees, and IT expenses are some of the items that we're seeing going up this year. Our contingency is set at $50,000. That's down about $25,000 from last year. We'll see some offsets with the revenue and expenses as it pertains to the Ridgeview property taxes that we no longer pay and then get reimbursed by them. So that's a net no impact when we look at revenue and expense combined. And then we are maintaining the same $120,000 contribution to the Highway 169 abatement fund. That's the same amount that we had last year, so that's no impact year to year. This next slide here is just focusing on the general levy for the prelim view of 2024. Again, the revenue, we've got the LG increase of about 165,000. Building permits are down, and then our miscellaneous revenue is down as well, which is mainly driven by we're now no longer receiving the Ridgeview property tax reimbursement. The expenses, the street department is up. We've got some employee allocation update, which is just a wash with the community center, so that's no impact overall. But again, here's what we're seeing: the fuel and engineering fees and training going up a bit. The police department is up to account for an increase in IT spend and also additional part-time hours as we transition to the full-time officers. And then the 10% health insurance rate increase is also assumed here. So you can see the general levy is up about just under $62,000 year to year. Next one, please. Here is just a summary of the general fund, the revenues at the top and the expenditures at the bottom. The property tax increase is the first line there, that's 62,000. The next line, that's where we're seeing the building permit impact. The intergovernmental line, that is where LGA hits, so that includes $165,000. And then we're seeing a little bit more in terms of other grants and local government aid as well, highway aid there. And then the next two are relatively minor changes, and then the miscellaneous line is where the Ridgeview reimbursement is no longer coming in, and we were getting revenue flowing in miscellaneous that didn't belong there in 2022, which kind of overstated our budget a little bit in 2023. So it's getting it down to more miscellaneous type number there. For the expenditures, it's just broken down by department. Key drivers here are the police and street that I mentioned before, with the fuel and engineering, doing more of our projects, bringing engineers for those, some training, CDL training, along with the fuel increases. And then for the police, that's where we saw the increase in IT spend and part-time hours. Next slide, please. Here is just a chart here, just kind of helps visualize all the dollars breakdown by department, just in a pie chart here. So you can see the biggest chunks being the police department and street, which make up over 70% of our general fund expenses. Community center, this line item. First thing I should point out that I didn't mention on the chart is we're just basically assuming same level of operations in 2024 as 2023. So that means no indoor pool. It's not rolling in any of the studies that are ongoing. So the same operations would continue. Our revenue's up. Memberships continue to rise, offset a little bit by that Johnson Controls payment that's not coming in. The expenses, increase in the health insurance rate here. And then again, this is where we saw benefit from updating employee allocation with the general fund. In here, the 169 abatement, like I mentioned before, it's flat in 2024, and this is projected to end in 2030. Next line item is the capital levy. You can see here, it's a little over $82,000 increase from last year. We're at $590,000. Our view now currently is at $672,100. Can go to the next slide here where we get some more detail on that. So like I mentioned, a little over $83,000 increase. Over 50% of it, roughly $350,000, is set earmarked for street maintenance, both contracted and in-house. The initial proposed capital budget that the departments came back with was about $1.3 million, which is a much more aggressive view than we've done in the past. I think last year that number may have been 2.5, close to $3 million. So all of those needs are there. They're just varying levels of needs, and the team has already taken a good hard look at prioritizing which ones that we need. So it's a little small text up there, but again, the first two items are the street maintenance, the contracted work followed by the in-house. I got a little under $50,000 for the sidewalk maintenance, $42,000 for the annual squad car leases. We've got $30,000 in for replacement of a 1999 truck that is needed badly. And then a few of the other ones are facility maintenance, city hall roof needs work, outdoor pool resurfacing, and then a handful of others that are making up the total, $672,000 there.
Can I have one
You sure
one
can.
point here? So as with previous years, the list that you see on the right here, and it's in your packets, please. But the list we looked at last week, this list that's on here is not up for approval tonight. What is up for approval tonight is the overall general levy in total. We will come back in December with a list similar to this. And we will ask for city council approval of the list, the itemized list at that time. So effectively what's up for approval tonight is, as part of the overall general levy, which we're seeking approval on, is $672,100 in capital levy. The final list, how that is broken out, would be approved and considered by city council in December.
Thank you. The next couple of slides, just kind of for reference, just referring to our annual street maintenance plan, the original 5-year plan there that evolves each year. On the next slide, I think we've got just a view of what that was in 2020, and then more current view here in 2023 on the right, but nothing more to really add on those. The EDA levy mentioned before, that's actually going down a bit this year. We just took a look at a little bit more detailed look at the revenue and expenses, and this is what we deemed is needed this year. So that is helping us this year a little bit by about $23,000. The next slide is the debt levy. So just a few things to notice here. Our 2010 D bond, we made our last payments here in 2023, so that is falling off and helping us. The 2022A, the Casal 36 project, the first payments aren't scheduled to be made until 2024, so that is coming on, but that is something that is obviously already been approved in the past. And then the next, all the other items except for the last one are just updates to the payment schedule. So we've had some that the 2021 bonds where they probably started out as just interest only payments in 2023. They're up a bit in 2024 because it's principal and interest. And then the last item on there is new debt here that we're anticipating taking for that plow truck that the Public Works Department is needing. This would be to get a new plow truck for not this plow season, but for the one after. So we're crossing fingers and hoping that it gets us through this plow season. So overall, the debt service is going up $147,000 year to year, which is, I'd say that's about 4 points of the overall levy of 5.68%. Yeah, so that's it. The action requested today is a motion to approve this resolution 031, adopting the preliminary 2024 general fund levy and budget as presented. I'm open to take any questions, comments.
Thank you, Mr. Grant, for your presentation. Anybody?
Hey Ryan, I've seen on your slides you had an assumption of a 10% increase on insurance obligations for next year.
Mhm.
That's just an assumption or an educated guess, correct?
Correct.
So it could be higher or lower than that number.
It could be.
So potentially setting this, and we still could be undershooting ourselves on that.
Yes, but we did get some preliminary feedback from Pete, and the ballpark number they gave us there was 7%.
Yep.
So That's not the only insurance line item that's in there, but so at least some feedback that we've gotten makes us feel pretty comfortable with the 10%.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Could you, in your, define for me, I think I know, but what is the tax capacity? What is that? As identified here, in 4,500, 44.5 million.
That's the number that we get from the county and that they give us by property. So that's the
So it's property.
property base.
Okay.
It's not, I can get back to you exactly. It's probably not exactly the taxable value. There's some
Yeah,
things
but,
that taken out of it, but it's based on the property value.
okay.
Yeah.
So we're spending or proposing 3.7 million against that tax capacity of 4.5 million. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
I believe so. I don't have it on the chart in front of me.
Well,
but if I know what chart you're looking at.
No,
So,
it's the,
yep, that gets our tax rate that's
okay,
probably.
so that comes out to about 81%. Now, I looked up St. Peter, New Prague, Jordan. St. Peter's at 51%. New Prague's at 43%. And Jordan's at 59%. I couldn't find Belle Plaine. They do a terrific job of hiding their figures. There's no way I could find it. To me, it's concerning. It's almost like we're almost maxed out compared to everybody else around here. Am I interpreting that wrong?
No, I mean, like the maxing out of it, I can't speak to that in terms of the maxed out terminology there, but I mean, if you're looking at it right, I'd have to look at the other cities and try to understand the dynamics that they have there, in terms of what's making up their tax base. But yeah, the calculations you did coming up with our tax rate is correct.
Right. I'm not saying that the city created that number. I understand the county did, but it's more than a glass, it's more than half full of glass. So, Mr. Mayor, I have a question for you. Are we going to have a chance to discuss this after Mr. Graff is done?
Well, I think if you want to entertain any questions with him, or if anybody else has any questions for you or Mr. Roby, then I think we'll vote on
Okay,
it.
because
Yes,
I do have some things I'd like to point out.
please go ahead.
Okay. I was here, for those of you who weren't, I was here 2 weeks ago. And this budget was put out in front of us that said 10% increase on the base levy and a 9.04% increase overall. I objected to that because, and Councilman Schluter brought up, if you look at that future of the, and I read it, it's got to be 80% of the comments in there are about the taxes or the utilities being too high. It's no secret. So now I get the update and it's essentially unchanged from the first one. We have what I refer to as a three-card Monte going on here. The money for the truck was taken out of the variable cost, if you will, section and put into the fixed cost, thus hiding the balance of that truck value and reducing the number to something that would say that's palatable, 5.68%. I disagree because it's still there. It looks great on paper, but nothing's changed. And as far as the new truck is concerned, I'm not knocking, they probably don't need a new truck. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I certainly have been before, I never heard during that discussion, city staff has looked into leasing, subcontracting, or buying used. Not once. City of Sueur needs another new truck. We're going to get it. And here's how it was done. That concerns me. Now, we have gone through 50+% base levy increases in the last 2 to 3 years overall. I'm not and do not suggest taking a nickel of that back. But I do object to anything over inflation. So I cannot support this budget.
So what's valuable to you, Michael?
Inflation, 3 to 3.5% in your total citywide levy. I could sell inflation, and I know that's been a concern, and I know it's been out there, and I'm not willing to buy it.
And we're just coming off a year from last year where we were at 89% increase. We talked about some supplies and goods that we're buying at 10% increases, health insurance going up 10%. So it's been a very difficult balance act. This committee and this council started off with a much higher. We've been working quite diligently all summer and into the fall to whittle this down. And I think we have it right now at a place I don't feel like I need to apologize for.
I'm not asking for an apology.
I'm not going to offer one.
Right.
So are you finished?
I am finished.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just want to make a general comment. I appreciate the candid discussion we were able to have at the work session, and I also appreciate the consideration that was taken into account for that discussion. So I like what I see tonight.
I did enjoy the cohesiveness of the council working on this together. It was a different way of doing things we had done in the past. I enjoyed it doing this way, and it was good to get feedback from everybody.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just two things. One is your response to your question on the truck. It would be a used pickup, and that's called out in the CIP. The replaced truck would be a used. We replace it with a used pickup.
But not the dump truck.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the plow truck.
That's what I was referring to, the plow truck.
So, just a general comment on the plow truck is, most cases where we could acquire a truck like this, we'd be looking at a market of trucks similar to the one that we have right now, where they're driven until they're beaten into the ground and value is depreciated to such an extent that we wouldn't be spending our money wisely. We talked about it earlier today with another, potential piece of equipment where the market just doesn't, you can't find plow trucks that fit our needs that are at a reasonable price that have 20,000 miles on them.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you will. During that session, it was said that it would cost, if we kept the old one, $40,000 to $50,000 a year to keep it running. Is that correct?
That was an estimate that we included in the event that we would need to replace an engine or transmission.
So that's one and done, or is it every year?
That we would need to budget it, not necessarily that we would use it, but we would need to budget, or we would recommend the city council that we budget $40,000 to $50,000 in the event that there were a catastrophic failure. We needed to get it back up and running.
But not necessarily over a 3 or 4 year period.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And also the intent, I'm sorry, one more thing, and just on that plow truck, the intent is not to hide where that plow truck expense is going. That's simply the alternative. I think council acknowledged that the plow truck was needed. And in order to avoid paying cash for it, the alternative is borrowing for it and issuing this equipment certificate, which is how we decrease the annual expense. I'd love to be able to pay cash for it, but that raises the levy more than is palatable.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution R 2023-031, adopting the preliminary 2024 general fund levy and budget as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Schleter, thank you. Seconding that motion. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed?
No.
We have one no, that is Councilmember Tui. Thank you. Moving on to item 7E, R 2023-032, accepting bid and awarding contract for the WWTF blower project. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As part of the 2023 approved CIP for the enterprise funds, a new blower to assist the current grossly inefficient blower at the wastewater treatment facility was approved by City Council. This year, public services staff have been working with engineering firm AE2S to solicit bids for the replacement of that blower. Rough estimates suggest that in utility cost alone, namely electric cost alone, that replacement at the proposed lowest responsible bid of $194,400. We may save upwards of $30,000 a year in electric expense at the wastewater treatment facility. So AE2S led a competitive bid process. Bids were opened last week. The lowest responsible bidder was Minnesota Mechanical Solutions Incorporated. And the recommendation tonight is to adopt resolution number 2023-032, accepting bids and awarding the contract for that work to be completed at the wastewater treatment facility.
Thank you. Any questions?
What is a blower? I don't even.
That's a good question.
So in simplest terms possible, it's part of the sewage treatment process that sends the influent sewage and sludge through part of the processing. And if you don't get just the right air mix, sometimes it's blowing too much air through, and then we have to treat it further, which adds additional cost. We have a blower right now that's not designed, it's not operating effectively for the size plant that we operate.
So it actually blows air?
Correct.
Okay. I thought maybe it was a pump or something.
Good question. I know this has been on our capital improvement list last year, and it's been evaluated and looked at by our experts. So this not coming out of left field, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Any other questions, concerns? If not, I will accept a motion to adopt R 2023-032, accepting bids and awarding a contract for WWTF blower project to Minnesota Mechanical Solutions Incorporated.
Moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Seconded by Councilmember Tui. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the voter agreement, agenda item 7F. Mr. Roby, you want to explain this, please? I read through this and I had some questions on it too, and I talked to you about it today. So
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So voter in this case actually is an acronym. Stands for Voting Operations Technology and Election Resources. As the state government and all forms of government like to create acronyms. And essentially it's the money that the Secretary of State's office has allocated to all the counties to distribute and help supply with printers, electronic voting aids, things like that. And each county in the state got some money, and the counties were allowed to allocate that to an extent how they wanted. Well, Sueur County got a whopping $8,600 or $8,100, excuse me, for 2023. The county does supply all the voting equipment for the city, so we host our own elections here, but the county provides the ballots. The county does all the mail-in process. The county provides the machines that we use here. So what the county has proposed to all cities is two options. You can either take your allotment of funds and use it how you see fit and track it all very carefully and send an itemized list back to the county every year. or we can allow the county to take those funds. And the proposal, the recommendation from staff is to authorize the city clerk, Lindsay, who will be leading our elections here at the city, to enter into an agreement with Worcester County, allowing the county to retain the $260 that the city has been allotted out of the county's funds. Frankly, it just is going to cost us more in an effort to track $260 than it is to actually utilize it for elections. And the county does a really great job. We appreciate all the county does to support us during elections. They run a great process. I've been here now for 3 elections last year. And they're a great partner for us, and they provide a lot of support during elections. So for $260, I think we can allow them to have it back.
All right, any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion for city clerk to enter into an agreement with Sueur County, allowing the county to retain all voter account funds received.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan.
Second.
Councilmember Williams, thank you. Seconding that. Any other questions, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Item 7G, call public hearing related to certification of delinquent utility accounts. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mr. Graff will join us for this one. This process is consistent with previous years. I'm sorry, I'm just giving Ryan's presentation as I introduce this. But those of you who've been here before know how this works. The city is allowed to assess delinquent utility bills. Each of the last several years, the council has done this. And I'm just going to let Ryan talk about the rest of it. My apologies, Mr. Graff.
Sure. So we, as Joe started out here, we must hold a public hearing related to the certification of these delinquent accounts. So earlier this month, staff and I pulled together the list and sent out 438 letters to property owners with a total delinquent balance of $581,228.80. Just some comparative figures. Last year, it's about the same number of letters, about 441. But the total was just over $481,000. So it is $100,000 higher this year. What drives that with the same amount of letters going out is probably 2 things. One, just some rate increases year over year. That wouldn't really be electric, but for water and wastewater. And then if you recall, we started doing late fees at the end of April of 2022. So that's probably the bigger impact is say 9 months of late fees in 2022 versus a full year of late fees in 2023. So that would be why that number is growing. Last year, the final number was about half of this initial number from last year. So what we sent to the county was about half. So I would anticipate that being roughly the same sort of percentage this year. And then following this public hearing, in October, we will bring forward to you a final certification number in November. And then we've just got to get that to the county by the end of the year. So that's all. Any questions on anything?
Questions on this? Just a little background for some of the council members. Years ago, and some municipalities do this, they'll just simply disconnect the utilities when there's a problem. We as council decided about 4 or 5 years ago to just certify these. It's a less aggressive approach, but eventually we will, receive those funds when the property is sold. So, any other questions on this?
Can I just add one quick thing? I think I said this last year and probably the year before, but Ryan and Sally and their team do the very best work they can at working with property owners to collect on these. Everything from payment plans to setting them up online so they can view their bills, so they can track their usage online, setting up customers who qualify for assistance with electric utilities in particular. That's that's the world that Sally lives and breathes, and Ryan's right there with her. So unfortunately, the number is significant. We do have a fair number of property owners, and you'll see this on the list, because the list will be public when council considers it, who just don't pay the bill. It's not just a 1 month delay, it's 9, 10, 12 months of not paying the bill, and that adds up, especially when we're adding 5% a month late fee. So I do appreciate the work that city staff does. If council were to ever want to consider going back to a system of shut-offs, it wouldn't entirely eliminate this amount. It's something that some municipalities still choose to do. It was, of course, outlawed during COVID, and then the state repealed that. Neither one is a perfect system, but as the mayor suggested, any amount that we do certify goes to a property, goes on the following year's property tax statements, and becomes just like any other assessment. And so they are required to pay it as part of the property tax payment. So the collection rate is I don't want to say good, because that's not the right term, but it's a successful collection rate.
Thank you.
And one thing, like I said, there's no perfect way of doing it, but just to kind of touch on, there are some aid financial aid that we don't qualify for because we don't shut off. So they're not saying that one way is better than the other, but just so you know, there's some assistance programs that are only out there if we do disconnect.
Because it's seen as a bigger risk to property owners. If the city is threatening to actually shut the utility off, then assistance programs will say, okay, well, if you're going to lose your electric service, we're going to come in and pay your bill. We don't. That threat does not exist for our utility customers, because that's the direction council has chosen to go. Good point.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Now I'll entertain a motion to call a public hearing related to delinquent utility accounts to be held at the October 9th, 2023 regular city council meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan.
Second.
Councilmember Tui, thank you. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. This brings us towards the end of the meeting. So at this time, we will entertain any reports or items of appreciation. Committees you want to report on, we will, as always, start with Mr. Huntington.
I have nothing tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Fleer.
I attended League of Minnesota Cities housing webinar on Wednesday, August 30th. I attended the Sueur County Commission meeting on Tuesday, September 5th for their public hearing on the county cannabis public use ordinance. I attended the Climate Smart Municipalities webinar on Thursday, September 7th, and as City Administrator Roby mentioned, Planning Commission meeting Thursday, public hearing on submitted plans for a new apartment plat on the corner of 2nd and Perry Street in the current Killer parking lot.
Thank you. Councilmember Sullivan.
We have a transit meeting tomorrow afternoon, at the Joint Services Building at 2:30. Other than that, I don't have anything, but I do want to say thanks to Joe and Brian and the rest of the managers or directors for their work on the budget for this year.
Thank you. Councilmember Swanberg.
Yeah, just in reflecting on today's date, 9/11, just want to say a very sincere thank you to our firefighters, our EMS personnel, and our police officers. We're very fortunate to have you in our community, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight. Councilmember Williams.
Again, I'd like to thank the staff for their work on their budget and the fresh eyes at looking at things, doing things differently with changeover in some of the staff. It's an opportunity that I think could promise some things better in the future. And enjoy the 2 local events that happened Sunday with the Lions Breakfast and Music and a Meal on Main was nice. Nice to see that happen. So other than that, I was impressed with the football team. I know they were maybe hanging their heads, but they showed it was a great game. Very good job.
Very good. I'm going to close with kind of reflecting on what Mr. Swanberg talked about. I woke up this morning, kind of reflected a little bit on 9/11, remembered where I was the day that happened. Just so we all remember, I just want to go around the room real quick. We're not going to dwell long, but I want to know where everybody was when this all took place 22 years ago, starting with, and just tell us where you were.
I was visiting a customer up in Shock.
Mr. Schleter?
I was working out at Micro Store.
So,
I was in high school in history class.
I'm showing your age.
I was working up at the hospital on the phone with Dr. Halloran, and he goes, oh my God, look what happened, since he was watching it.
Mr. Tui?
I was sitting in my office and two people came by and said, did you see what happened in New York? It's just like it was yesterday.
Incredible. Mr. Swanberg?
Yeah, I was at work at school.
Joe?
Was at my senior locker, I ran up to Mr. Bruns's room to get his input on it.
I happened to be in the lobby of the school. I was dropping something off, and you were the first person I saw. And a lot of kids were starting to come out into the hallways, and they were rolling TVs out there. I asked you what was going on. You didn't even know yet. And I went on to work. I didn't find out what happened until I got to work. So I appreciate y'all sharing that. I think it's important to share that with ourselves, and as we get older, share with younger people as we get further away from this event. So with that, I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate your work here tonight, everybody. Thank you. With that, I will entertain a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
Thank you.